lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Tonight on The Late Show Live, a day of national shame in Britain tomorrow as universities all across the country prepare rallies to mark October the 7th. Do we need to take a leaf out of President Trump's book and start defunding these ultra-woke liberal institutions? Hello, good evening. On The Late Show Live tonight, a national day of shame. In breaking news tonight, it's been revealed universities all across Britain are bracing themselves for student-led Palestine protests on the anniversary of October the 7th, which of course falls tomorrow, and it's less than a week after the Manchester synagogue attack. And is it any surprise our young people are so brainwashed when they consume this kind of nonsense from the virtue signaller-in-chief, Gary Neville?
The division that's being created is absolutely disgusting. Mainly created by angry, middle-aged white men.
Inheritance tax, which my father actually eliminated for farmers in the United States. I see what's happening to the farmers over here, and it directly mirrors so much of the strife that so many of the farmers in the United States had.
Elsewhere tonight, Starmer harms the farmers in Britain. Meanwhile, President Trump mooting a massive $10 billion bailout of farmers in the United States to rescue them from oblivion. Do we need to learn some lessons from President Trump? Elsewhere, a stalker comes just yards from Prince Harry during his recent trip to the UK, and we'll also be diving headfirst into the stories from tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hours before they hit the shelves back in Blighty. And of course, we're live in Washington DC, just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories America's talking about and that matter to you in Britain, including this one.
God bless the United States Navy.
Aye, aye, sailor. President Trump celebrates the 250th anniversary of the United States Navy. And in China, the Mega Bridge of Dreams. China unveils the world's tallest bridge, but of course, in Britain, we may struggle to build a motorway overpass. It might take us a couple of years, actually. You won't believe what else that bridge in China has to offer. I'm Ben Leo. This is The Late Show Live, and your night's just getting started. Very good evening to you. Thank you for your company. I'm afraid to say another load of useful idiots in Britain are about to shame the country once again. Because if you thought spending thousands on university meant maybe, I don't know, getting a decent education and solid life experience, well, think again. Because breaking on The Late Show Live tonight, it's been revealed universities all across Britain are bracing themselves for student-led Palestine protests on the anniversary of October the 7th, which falls, of course, tomorrow, Tuesday. Less than a week as well after the Manchester synagogue attack. The far-left rallies will take place 2 years on from the Hamas attack, which left almost 1,200 people dead, many more injured or kidnapped, and, of course, provoked the latest war in Gaza. Police, politicians and community leaders have all begged for the postponement of Palestine protests in the wake of Manchester, but Liberal student unions are pushing forward anyway because I guess nothing says you're one of the good guys like holding a rally against victims of a terrorist attack, does it? At Queen Mary University in London, organisers are planning a rally entitled 2 Years of Genocide, 2 Years of Resistance. Staying in London at King's College, students were invited to a talk entitled Why It Didn't Start on October the 7th. And students at Strathclyde University in Glasgow are urged to, quote, grab your flag and keffiyeh and attend a protest for Palestine. The commies as well, they're breaking cover at the University of Sheffield, where the Revolutionary Communist Party refused requests to move the date of its rally because they said they couldn't afford to reprint their posters. Boo-hoo. And in Birmingham, protesters will hold a vigil for Palestine to, quote, honour our martyrs. I just hope they're not talking about Hamas there. And students at Goldsmiths, University of London, are also planning an event which is advertised as a night of remembrance and resistance. Well, tonight, a spokesman for the Board of Deputies of British Jews said of the protests, we are disgusted by reports of recent hate-filled protests on university campuses. In the wake of the terror attack on the Heaton Park Hebrew congregation, it's clear we need fundamental change of mindset to drive out anti-Jewish incitement at all levels of our society, including from our universities. Well, I'm asking tonight, is it any surprise these university dwellers are so dense when we have the likes of Gary Neville to look up to?
I just kept thinking as I was driving home last night that we're all being turned on each other, and the division that's being created is absolutely disgusting. Mainly created by angry, middle-aged white men who know exactly what they're doing. Funnily enough, on one of my development sites last week, there was a Union Jack flag put up, and I took it down instantly.
Yeah, no, Gary. The division being created isn't from middle-aged white men. The division comes from half the country still having their marbles and raising the alarm at the surrender of their nation, all while the other half keep their head in the clouds as they drone on about diversity and open borders. But anyway, going back to universities, do we maybe need to take a leaf out of America's book, where the Trump administration has previously slashed billions in federal money from schools accused of liberal bias? Here, President Trump last year promised to pull funding over concerns about anti-Semitism and diversity practices, leading to multi-million-dollar deals with schools such as Columbia University and Brown University.
My first week back in the Oval Office, my administration will inform every college president that if you do not end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer. I will inform every educational institution in our land that if they permit violence, harassment, or threats against Jewish students, the schools will be held accountable for violations of the civil rights law.
Oh, I don't know. Could you imagine it? Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the Labour government, they all say they want to tackle anti-Semitism. Would they have the balls? Would they have the bottle to do something similar in the UK? Well, let's get the take of political commentator Eyal Yacobi now. Eyal, thanks for your company this evening. What's your thoughts on what I'm calling a national day of shame in Britain tomorrow, the anniversary of October the 7th, of course?
Thank you so much for having me on. I would agree with you that it's a national day of shame, but it appears as though every single day in Britain under Keir Starmer has been a national day of shame. I can't tell what's sadder, the fact that the students are hosting this on October 7th, or the fact that the Home Secretary just announced that a new wave of Gaza's students would be coming to the UK, as though that would make anything better. But in terms of the situation in the UK, until Keir Starmer does more than just words, and actually institutes policies to stop this disgusting rhetoric and violence that is permeating throughout the UK, I don't think we're going to see any real change. And I think you saw this from the Jewish community in Manchester that shouted at David Lammy, saying, shame on you with blood on your hands, and they are 100% right.
Yeah, what do you make of the argument from the left who say it's fine to protest, it's free speech, it may not be, respectful, but it's free speech. Of course, you've got the First Amendment in the US as well. What's your take on that kind of argument?
I would agree with you if it was in the U.S., but when you have people like Graham Linehan getting arrested after they land at London Heathrow Airport, or the countless other reports of grandmas on Facebook getting arrested for their posts on Facebook, it doesn't really seem like the UK has free speech unless you agree with a certain type of ideology that aligns with this leftism, Islamist rhetoric that has been growing in the UK for decades now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're aware, Eyal, but it sounds like you're describing a two-tier kind of system there. And the word two-tier has become a bit of a meme in the UK because we're accused of having two-tier justice, two-tier policing, two-tier government. I mean, is that what you're suggesting? It's two-tier?
I mean, look, I think when you see Union Jack flags getting banned if they're outside of the designated rally areas, or the countless people that have been arrested for Facebook memes or Twitter memes versus calls for intifadas and open support for Hamas and Hezbollah and every single terrorist organization with British blood on their hands, I think the only way to describe it would be tier policing.
Okay, and I just two more questions before I let you go. One will be on the Trump's response to universities in the United States, defunding them and so on. But before I get to that, Eyal, we just showed you a clip there. You probably won't know him. He's a massive soccer player in the UK, a previous soccer player. Used to play for England, Manchester United. He caused a lot of controversy this morning, Gary Neville, by saying that the division is being created by angry, middle-aged white men. Is he right?
He's referring to Keir Starmer potentially, but I don't think he was. I think it's funny, and it reminds me actually of what happened in Germany at the Christmas market last year, if you remember, that someone drove their car into it and murdered over a dozen Christians that were simply going with their family to attend the Christmas market. And it seems like this constant rhetoric, at least coming from America looking into Europe, that an Islamist will enter a synagogue, drive his car into a synagogue and murder two people. An Islamist in Germany will drive their car into a Christmas market. You see daily in Spain, in France, in Belgium, stabbings. And then for some reason, the people who get blamed are the people that are saying that they're trying to cause division are white middle-aged men. It's almost dystopian. And it would be laughable if it wasn't so scary, because it's the reality of Europe right now.
Yeah, I suppose it was George Orwell who said the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their utmost and final command. Just finally, Eyal, tell us about President Trump here in the US. How's he been dealing with the sort of uber-liberal woke takeover of universities, and particularly anti-Semitism at college campuses?
I think Trump has been delivering on every promise he made on the campaign trail. And as you played that clip, I was actually in the room when he stated this, is all the things that he's doing. If anyone is surprised on it, then they were simply not paying attention during the election. But the American people gave him a mandate that watching these disgusting protests that were celebrating October 7th, that were defacing school property, that were preventing students from actually attending class, and he's put a stop to it at dozens of universities. And it's not just anti-Semitism that he stopped. He is stopping this enforcement of DEI. He's launched investigations into anti-Christian bias as well. And he's been given a mandate right now to actually create equality at our universities, but not equality in terms of this leftist dogma, rather equality in terms of diversity of thought, in terms of actually allowing students to study in peace, in terms of allowing students to voice their opinions without being canceled or the mob rule dominating. And I think we've seen significant progress made by President Trump to fix a lot of these universities.
Yeah, what a revolutionary idea, eh? Universities, I mean, last time I checked when I was younger, were, as you just said, meant to be battlegrounds for ideas and diverse opinions. I'm not sure what went wrong, maybe the Marxist takeover. But anyway, Eyal Jacobi, thank you very much. Appreciate your company, and we'll catch up soon. Let us know your thoughts on that, viewers. gbnews.com/your say. One has caught my eye already. Regalia have said, the division comes from Marxists and them useful idiots. Marxist stock in trade is grievance. If it does not exist, they'll manufacture it. Keep those coming. Let's get the take now of my panel tonight. US commentator and Democrat Party strategist Bob Weiner, and the Daily Mail's US political reporter Victoria Churchill. Hello, panel. Welcome back for another week. Hope you're well. Bob, what's your take on what's going on in the UK tomorrow? The anniversary of October the 7th. Yes, it's free speech, but surely these young students should have a little bit of respect.
I totally agree with you, and I agree with the prior speaker. But at the same time, you can't do what's happening in the United States, and people who write an op-ed in a college paper suddenly are hauled away. I mean, the terror of what Trump is doing the terror.
So what is he doing? Just explain to our viewers what's happened.
Well, he carts them away and deports them and tells them that they're violating every law when they're not violating a law. It's, as you pointed out, it's the First Amendment.
So these are students, these are international students he's kicking out?
Correct.
But I mean, some would argue...
And American students he's talking about, too.
But
he has no tolerance whatsoever for the fact that actually Israel has been dressed down recently politically in terms of the overreach that it's had, and that's a big part of it. He has no tolerance for a true dialogue on the issue of, and there are, by the way, many, it almost was a majority, but of senators who want to cut funding from Israel because of their overreach on blocking medical supplies and food supplies, and so, you know, there's two sides to the story, but there is no excuse for violence. There is none in our deepest sympathy. Deepest sympathy on Manchester.
Oh, in Manchester, got it. Okay, Victoria, Bob's talking about people getting kicked out of US universities, but just clarify, they are international students who the Trump administration says is coming to the United States. They're talking the country down and arguably, in some occasions, promoting Hamas, which in the UK at least, in the US, is a terrorist group. That's why they're getting kicked out.
Yeah, and you know, I think the administration, particularly even the State Department now, has been very clear about who can have a visa to be a student here in the U.S. and who can't. And if you're inciting violence, if you're bringing dangerous protests on campus, you know, you're not welcome here. And I think they've made that very clear.
What do you make of what's going on in the UK then? These massive protests on October the 7th, so it's tomorrow now. Scotland, Birmingham, London, Liverpool, people taking to campuses all across the country on the day of the anniversary of the attack. 1,200 people died. The worst attack in the history of the Jews, against the Jews, since the Holocaust.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's definitely very tone deaf what they're doing, but I also think it's important to note that, you know, you have members of parliament in the UK who are calling for the UK to be involved in Hamas in Gaza in the war with Israel. And, you know, I think that's very interesting. And, you know, even I believe Home Secretary is her title, Shabana Mahmood, I believe she's even come to some of these pro-Palestine protests.
She has, yeah. Yeah, she has. I mean, is that an issue for you?
You know, I think it's interesting when a member of the government, obviously it's a little bit different that she is also an elected member of the parliament as well as being the Home Secretary. But, you know, I think being that outwardly in favor of a group that has committed mass atrocities, you know, as I pointed out, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and to have the Home Secretary supporting that, I would not like to see, you know, our secretary, whether that was, you know, of defense or Secretary of State, I would not want to see them participating in those.
But let's get the big picture, too. We want this peace deal to succeed. We want the hostages to come back. We want Hamas to give up their violence. We want both sides of this to occur. And I'm the last person who usually gives Trump any credit, but he actually engineered something here that could be very successful.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Bob, you have the squeakiest chair I've ever heard in my life.
What's going on.
I'm going to get you some WD-40 in the break, and I'm going to get on my knees and spray that chair because it's doing my head in. Just finally, is university education worth the paper it's printed on anymore? I argue it's not. I mean, unless my kids wanted to go and be a doctor or an architect or a scientist, I'd probably say, okay, you need to go to university. But otherwise, I think the risk-reward of them getting indoctrinated with far-left Marxist claptrap is just too high.
Well, I went to a very liberal college, Oberlin College, which actually trained me to realize that the Vietnam War, you couldn't figure out the purpose. Today, half of America can't tell you what the point of the Vietnam War was. So I think universities do engender enormous positive thinking and create the ability of you to debate and to challenge established policies. I think that part's important.
OK, interesting start. Let us know what you think. Viewers, gbnews.com/your say. Nick Parsons, good evening, Nick. You've said very worrying, this far-left Marxist bias in schools and universities indoctrinating kids and students needs to be rooted out and stopped. Well, they're doing it here, this side of the pond, Nick. They're doing it here. And also, it's not just universities. Look at Netflix with all the pro-trans. I mean, the stuff on Netflix, the kids' shows, CoComelon. I'm afraid to say my 2-year-old has watched CoComelon in the past. I don't think he will anymore. CoComelon, other shows on Netflix, just trans ideology, people cancelling Netflix memberships en masse. The indoctrination is everywhere. Anyway, still ahead on The Late Show Live.
I want to farm. I want a future in farming. And at this rate, there's not going to be one.
As Keir Starmer wages war on farmers back home in the UK with his inheritance tax policy, the US president is considering a major lifeline for his countrymen and women. $10 billion bailout. Why can't we do the same? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We must leave the ECHR and repeal the Human Rights Act.
Hello, welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Ben Leo. That was, of course, Kemi Badenoch speaking at the Tory conference today. Polling suggests it doesn't matter who the Tory leader will be in the next couple of years. They won't have any poll boost when it comes to popularity. The one person, though, as I revealed last night, who would give the Tories a poll boost is Boris Johnson. I think that is for the clouds, though. We'll have more on that shortly and all the latest on the Tory conference. Elsewhere, though, like their UK counterparts, American farmers over here are facing a very tough year. But unlike Labour in the UK, the Trump administration is reportedly tonight considering a major bailout worth at least $10 billion for farmers hit hard by his tariffs. In a social media post this week, Trump has claimed the US had made so much money from tariffs that a small portion could be used to support struggling farmers all across the US, vowing he would never let them down and branding them patriots. Wouldn't it be nice to hear Keir Starmer talk about our farmers like that? This is what Eric Trump, President Trump's son, told me last November when we sat down over his father's love for those very farmers.
But what you asked what I would say to the farmer, we love you. And I think across and universally across the UK, I'm not sure if I've ever met a farmer, somebody who's heavily involved in agriculture that didn't love our family.
Yeah.
And didn't love Donald Trump and everything he stood for. So I guess my message to them would be go out, fight like hell, make your voices heard, and hopefully you'll achieve the same result that we achieved on the opposite side of the pond. But you have a friend in us and you have a friend in our family.
Well, that's a stark contrast to the situation in the UK, where the Labour government continues to ignore farmers' warnings over plans to cap inheritance tax relief on farmland and, of course, the devastating impact it could have on British farming. We're all so polite in the UK, aren't we? I'm just watching that clip and comparing it to protests over here, which is all very civil in the UK. I love it. Anyway, should Labour take a page from Trump's playbook and step in to support British farmers, or at least speak to them in a very nice tone like President Trump and Eric Trump talks about? Let's get the take of Neil Parish, farmer and former Conservative MP, of course. Neil, good evening. Wouldn't it be nice to hear Keir Starmer talk so fondly about the likes of you and your colleagues, eh? And also have a bailout as well, $10 billion this side of the pond to help farmers hit by his tariffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Ben, it's just unbelievable that you've got, a president like President Trump who actually sees the benefit of actually producing food, having those family farms in America. And here, you see, not only is it not helping, is Keir Starmer not helping, it's this sort of tax on farms which is sort of stopping people investing. They're terribly worried about handing it on to their children and grandchildren. Their grandchildren and grandchildren are very upset because the one thing they want to do is farm. I mean, I grew up on just a small farm. We made it bigger as I left school. I worked for virtually nothing in order to try and take the farm on eventually, and that's what a lot of younger farmers do, and that's the only way you can make the business work. And then we produce good food, and of course the more food we produce, in a way, the better it would be for our economy. And also we've got food inflation, and so therefore why cut back on the food that we're producing, because that's what they're doing. And I just think farmers, I suppose all people like to be loved, but farmers like to be valued because they feel that they're producing good food for the country, and that's what they do very well. They want to be left to get on with their businesses and not interfered with, basically. Now, we've had one of the driest summers on record. Quite a lot of people are having to buy silage and winter food now, because they've fed a lot of their food through the summer. So, there's lots of problems. And what we would like is a Prime Minister and a government that not only sort of respected farmers and sympathised with them, but also had a policy on agriculture, because they really don't have one at all. They've largely torn up quite a lot of the policies that were put in place by the last government. They weren't perfect policies, but at least they were supporting farmers. But now we're seeing nothing, and I just think it's a great shame. I was at a farmers' meeting yesterday, and people are angry, but they're also just depressed, I think. And of course, the Chancellor now has to make the decision, does she not, when she gets to her budget in November, as to whether to lay down the legislation to actually bring in this tax. And I think there's going to be one last drive by the farming community, and with your help on GB News, can I say to you, Ben, can I thank GB News, because when you have a farmers' protest, you try and find it on the BBC or any of the other networks. It's very difficult to find, but we find it on GB News. So I thank you for that.
Well, that's why we're here, Neil. We're here to do the job that the BBC and the likes of Sky and the other mainstream media outlets weren't doing for many, many years. And isn't it funny? We come along, we set records in the ratings, we trounce Sky, we trounce the BBC News channel. And by the way, the British public start getting some truth about the state of affairs. Interesting that. Neil, just last question before I let you go. Are you any closer, the farming community, are you any closer to having your voices heard? Of course, it's the budget in November. Are you expecting Rachel Reeves to sort of surrender, wave the white flag?
I rather fear not, because I think they've got this misplaced idea that, farmers are wealthy. Now, there are some farmers that are wealthy, but most working farmers, it's working capital, and their actual income is about 1% of return on capital. So they haven't got a big income. They can't afford the tax. But I rather fear then it's very much about wealth. A lot of the Labour Party conference was always all about taxing the wealthy, and I rather fear that they think farmers fall into that category. And of course, what they can't work out, can they? And I don't think any of them much have been in business. They can't work out the difference between capital and income. You can have a lot of capital, but if it doesn't return much income, you can't afford to pay. And I think this government is just slowing everything up, and it's treating other small businesses, aren't they? Not just farmers, really badly. And then they wonder why the economy is shrinking and she can't get the money that she wants to pay for all public services. Much better to cut taxes and get on with it. But then I sound like a Tory then, don't I? But you understand where I'm coming from. You can't keep taxing not just farmers, businesses, and then expect the business to grow and grow the economy. It's just the wrong direction. And I just hope that even at this late hour, that some sense will dawn on them. But I rather fear they've got such a black hole to fill, haven't they, that if they try and give up on this one, even though it's not, the trouble is too, it'll take them years to get the money. It's a very slow burn policy. That's what it was offered.
Well, it's not about the money, is it? Let's be honest.
Yes, exactly.
It's not about the money, is it? It's not about 500 million quid a year, which is hardly going to touch the sides. One day of funding of the NHS, maybe some hotels for small boat arrivals for a couple of weeks. I don't know. It's not about the money, is it? So, I mean, who knows what it's really about? I can sit here and go down the conspiracy theories all night.
Yeah, sorry, Ben. I think they think it's a sort of form of class warfare, but I'm afraid they haven't got the right, they haven't got the right people, basically. And anyway, don't destroy wealth creation, because you just destroy your country, don't you? And I rather fear they're proving that.
Yeah. Neil, thank you very much. Appreciate your company at this late hour. Neil Parish, farmer and former Conservative MP. And the reason, I'll just say, viewers, the reason Labour don't know how to create wealth is because they go to universities, they do PPE at Oxford or Cambridge, they then go to join a think tank, maybe they'll go and work in the office of an MP somewhere, and then they'll get elected to Parliament. They've got no idea about the real world, how it works. They've never employed anybody, they've never worked a real job in their lives, and then they have career politicians, as we see today in government. They just have absolutely no idea how anything works. Some people who do know how things work in the real world is commentator and Democrat Party strategist Bob Weiner and the Daily Mail's US political reporter Victoria Churchill. Victoria, do you know how things work in the real world?
Well, I like to think so. We were just talking about what we see on universities and how people come out of universities in the last segment. And, I think it's important to point out that a lot of university professors have also never really worked in the real world, which I think contributes
academics, goodness me,
to, some of the issues that we see on college campuses, whether that's in the US and the UK. Even in my field, I studied political science. These professors studied how to do campaigns. A lot of them have never worked campaigns. If they did, maybe it was 20, 30 years ago. And that's an industry like journalism that changes all the time. But going back to the farmers, I think it's interesting. I primarily cover the U.S. Congress for the Daily Mail, and there's a push by some members of Congress to get back to, particularly with meat, country of origin labeling. And I think that's really interesting because, in the UK, when you go into Tesco's or you go into M&S Food, it'll say, these bangers are made with pure British pork. And it seems to me that in some of the major retailers, at least those two, there's a sense of pride with the public that purchases those food to make sure that they're purchasing products that are made in the UK.
Massive marketing campaigns, Union Jacks all over the meat packaging. So in the US, they don't tell you the country of origin?
No.
So you just pick up a steak, for example, it won't say, from Argentina or from Arizona. You just don't know?
No.
Wow, that's bizarre. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Bob?
Well, I would say you've got to point out on the farmer issue that China has been buying half of all the soybeans. This is for the soybean farmers, and now they are buying zero. So that is why Trump,
because of the tariffs.
Because of the tariffs. And so Trump created this mess, and now he's got to fix it up. The other thing about the real world, let's talk about ICE. Rappelling down a Black Hawk helicopter and landing and then carrying away naked children and slamming people on the ground. That's the real world that we are living in the United States right now.
Hang on, what's Black Hawk helicopters and ICE got to do with farmers?
Well, you asked about the real world. We were talking about Palestine there for a minute, so I figured I'd go to another subject.
All right, well, you save the ICE and the TDS for later on in the show. Farmers, though, it's nice. It's refreshing to see as a Brit, Bob, that although the farmers are being hit by Trump's tariffs, yes, he indirectly caused this issue, at least he's doing something about it. In the UK, you could argue the cost of living is the government's fault. You could argue that electricity prices is the government's fault, but the government aren't reacting in the same way. That's why I think people admire this bailout, $10 billion from Trump.
No, because the president of the soybean farmers of America was on television this morning saying they do not want the bailout. They want to be able to work for their profits.
Well, they're going to be skinned in the meantime, aren't they?
They're being destroyed by Trump's tariffs, and they can't work for their profits.
So you can't give him credit for giving them, although it's his
give him credit for fixing his own mess. You know, he did it in the first administration, too. Sure, he can buy his way out. He tries to buy his way out of universities, out of law firms, and everything else. He tries to buy his way out of everything and persuade with money. You can't, that's not the value of America.
But would you rather he didn't give them the $10 billion bailout then?
I'd rather he
and farms go bust. You'd have no bacon, Bob. You'd have no muesli and bacon and Weetabix on your breakfast table, no pancakes in the morning. Would you rather he didn't give them a $10 billion bailout? Is that
Everyone says the tariffs is going to create a depression like it did with Smoot-Hawley, and then you had Herbert Hoover and the depression.
Fine. Let's say that's correct, and I agree with you. I don't, but let's say it's correct. Now, though, with the farmers facing a predicament because of the tariffs, would you rather Trump didn't give them a $10 billion bailout? Is that what you're saying?
Of course, give them the money, but don't create the mess.
Yeah. Well, there
Fix
we go.
your tariffs.
We got there in the end.
All right, yeah.
Right. Bob, thank you. Victoria, thank you. gbnews.com/your say. Let me know your thoughts on that. It's just nice to hear from Americans and American leaders that they value farmers so much. It'd be nice to hear Keir Starmer and the Labour government to repeat such adoration for our farmers. Coming up on The Late Show Live, we'll take a deep dive into what's making headlines in the UK and across the Atlantic. And also tonight, rather startling story actually. A known stalker was able to get close to Prince Harry on his trip to the UK recently. Not once, but twice. I have all the details, who the woman is, and some of the extraordinary lengths she's been to in recent years to get close to the Duke of Sussex. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
God, look at that. Welcome back to The Late Show Live. That's on your screens there, if you're watching at home, is the world's tallest bridge. It's in China, but you'll never guess what else it can do. More on that very shortly. In the meantime, though, let's take a look at some of the newspaper front pages hitting the shelves in Britain tomorrow, starting with The Times. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary. Police could get power to ban protests. This is mooting sweeping new laws to ban protests, such as pro-Palestine protests, if they pose further problems in the future. The Express tomorrow. Tories pledge to slash £300 billion of welfare costs. I mean, they're coming out with big ambitions, aren't they? First, you've got the UK ICE kicking out 750k illegals, then you've got £300 billion in welfare savings. The Independent tomorrow. Badenoch told she has a death wish for the Conservative Party. The Tory leader announced she would ditch the ECHR and deport 150,000 illegals a year. Dominic Grieve, the Remainer-in-Chief, warned it would mean the demise of the party. I mean, with respect to Dominic Grieve, yeah, why would anyone listen to you? The Sun. Grace O'Malley Kumar to receive George Medal after she died fighting to save her friend in the Nottingham stabbing attack. The New York Post. Insensitive Meghan Markle apparently lounges with her feet up near the Princess Diana crash site in Paris. I've seen this video. I think it's a bit of a reach from the New York Post. And the front page of the Washington Post. The Supreme Court and President Donald Trump are headed for a reckoning in new term. After months of emergency rulings, the justices will be asked to render final verdicts on the economic and immigration policies at the core of Trump's presidency. Right, let's hit Paul Cox, former headliner, GB News superstar and good friend in London, to go through the papers. Paul, good evening. What story would you like to get stuck into? What's ticking your fancy?
I tell you what, the first thing I'd like to say is, Ben, it was lovely to see that you went home to see your boys this week. I watched you on Instagram. I'm glad you had a trip home, mate. I'm also glad to speak to you and Weena and Victoria. But anyway, let's talk about, I don't know, Tories pledged to slash £3 billion off the cost of welfare. I think it's an incredibly big story. It's interesting, actually, because we've obviously got the Tory conference. There's very little mention of that whatsoever, and we can all guess why. But this is a huge pledge. They'd have to slash, I mean, they don't have to slash. We do need to slash an incredible amount from the welfare state budget because it's just unaffordable. £3 billion, of course, is a huge amount. Labour struggled to slash £5 billion recently, and their backbenchers rebelled, and they've managed to slash absolutely nothing. Obviously, this relies on Kemi Badenoch getting into power, which is highly unlikely. But again, it's pretty much a reform policy. Reform have pledged to come in. They've pledged to attack immigration, which they absolutely need to. They pledged to attack the welfare bill, which they'll absolutely have to. So I think this is good news in terms of a step in the right direction, but it won't be them delivering it at all. They are not the Conservative Party of the future. Reform are effectively the Conservative Party of the future, Ben.
Yeah, well, Kemi was saying, I think yesterday or the day before, saying that Reform aren't even Conservative in nature. She was saying they want to cut the two-child benefit cap. She was banging on about some other stuff. I just wonder, though, as you mentioned, Paul, Keir Starmer couldn't even get a minor welfare reform through Parliament, despite a stonking majority, you know, more than 400 MPs. So I don't see how the Tories think they'll do it when they pride themselves so much on being a broad church. They're still packed to the rafters with Lib Dems, for goodness sake.
Yeah, they absolutely. I mean, you only got to look at Dominic Grieve today talking about it being a death knell for the Conservative Party to leave the ECHR. The elephant in the room is that any party of the future will have to leave the ECHR in order to be successful and deliver a manifesto pledge, which has been in place in every manifesto since about 2010, and that is that we will tackle the numbers of illegal immigration entering the UK via the Channel. Now, you can only do that if you leave the ECHR, because it's the ECHR that ties us up in all sorts of bureaucratic human rights nonsense, quite frankly. So it's the only way to be successful. So Dominic Grieve is the archetype of the Conservative Party that tried to thwart Brexit, that will thwart anything that they'll try to do going forward. The clean slate option is Nigel Farage's Reform Party, because they don't have a history, because they are clear about what they want to do, and they will only get to power on the back of a manifesto pledge to do exactly that.
Yeah. Paul, just finally, you've got 30 seconds. What do you make of Gary Neville saying that you, an angry middle-aged white man, is causing division all across the country?
Yeah, I mean, He is kind of aiming at me. I'm 45, I'm white, and I'd quite happily fly the St George Cross or the Union Jack. He's wrong. He's a dinosaur in that respect. I mean, and to inadvertently and inexplicably bring in white middle-aged men into the debate is divisive in its own sense. It wasn't a middle-aged white man that committed a terrorist attack last week. It wasn't a middle-aged white man that committed a terrorist attack at the Manchester Arena. It was a Muslim man on both occasions. And if you're not going to call it out, then you're not going to be part of the solution.
Yeah, great said. Well said, sorry, Paul. Thank you very much. Appreciate your company, and I think we're catching up in the second hour. So go and get yourself a coffee or a Red Bull or vodka or a gin or something, whatever your fancy is. And I'll speak to you soon. Thank you, Paul. Right, still ahead on The Late Show Live.
It's not the park. It's me. I'm trans, Norma.
Oh, get it off my TV screen. Go woke, go broke. I'm pleased to say Netflix shares have tumbled into the gutter after promoting the pro-trans agenda across, by the way, a myriad of shows. When will big corporations finally wake up? We don't want this stuff, this crap, thrown down our throats. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Ben Leo. Go woke, go broke. Elon Musk has urged his followers to cancel, tear up, shred it, their Netflix subscriptions after accusing the streaming company of carrying out a transgender woke agenda. The controversy stems from backlash over an animated Netflix show called Dead End Paranormal Park. Take a look for yourself.
It's not the park. It's me. I'm trans, Norma. And everyone at school knows, and everyone at home knows. And being here, it's like a whole new place. I can just be Barney, and I can choose if and when I tell people. I've never been happier. And that's saying something when I spent today chased by terrifying zombie mascots. Pugsley reminded me how important it is to live your life without apology.
Oh my goodness me, your children, your grandchildren, my kids admittedly are watching this absolute trash. It's not just that show, it's a myriad of shows. Well, let's bring in former senior advisor to RFK Jr., Link Lauren. Link, have you cancelled your Netflix subscription yet?
I absolutely have canceled my Netflix subscription. It's great to be back with you. We cannot keep pushing this gender and trans ideology onto young, impressionable children. They're so malleable, their brains are sponges, their frontal lobes won't even connect for probably another 20 years. So it makes me happy to see that Netflix's stock has plummeted, kind of like Precious going skydiving or doing a cannonball. It's gone down, hit a thud, hit the ground. It's probably not going to come back up anytime soon, and it's for good reason. We have to tell these people who we are with our wallets. We want common sense. We want kids to be kids. And this is a deliberate, demonic choice to push this gender and trans ideology time and time again onto these young kids who are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old.
Yeah, it is demonic. I agree. It's not about being gay or trans or any of that stuff. Even if it's a heterosexual relationship, I've got a 2-year-old son and a nearly 6-year-old son. I don't want them watching Netflix and cartoons and kids' animations and being exposed to any kind of sexual relationship. Let kids be kids, you absolute weirdos. Link, tell us about Prince Harry. What's happened to him?
What's happening with Prince Harry? I don't know. I think he's still being whipped by Meghan Markle back in Montecito. I mean, she's jetted off to Paris. She's at the Balenciaga fashion show with her fabulous friends. That's what she's doing, Mrs. Relatable. You know, whenever she travels, she says she takes these videos or she FaceTimes her kids. What if she actually just spends time with her kids? That would be a novel concept for her. But she's at the Balenciaga fashion show. Balenciaga, they've had issues with, you know, the grooming of children and pedophilia, but this is what she wanted to do. So maybe she'll have fodder for season 3 of her Netflix show.
Yeah, and I think Harry had a stalker as well. Did you hear about that? There was a stalker that was following Harry around for a couple of years.
Yeah, no, I heard Prince Harry had some type of stalker, but he has, you know, millions and millions of dollars that he's gotten from Netflix. So surely he can afford some security to handle one woman who's coming and asking him for pictures. But I think Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, they're so hell-bent on always playing the victim card. I mean, this is not even close to the amount of attention Princess Diana got or Princess Catherine gets. So if you can't handle one woman popping up here and there, you might want to reassess your security detail.
Yeah, the reports tonight say that it was a woman who entered a so-called secure zone at a central London hotel on September the 9th, where Prince Harry was at the time, and she came within a few yards of him. And apparently this same woman, I mean, she sounds nuts, but she'd followed him to the likes of Nigeria, trips abroad and stuff, so she's very properly obsessed. But yeah, she came within a couple of yards. He was okay, of course.
Maybe it was Doria. Is it Doria Ragland? Sorry, go on.
Maybe. What's Dora up to these days? Well, yeah, who knows? Don't go down that avenue, let's not say. What should we finish on? What about Portland, Link? What's going on in Portland?
Oh my God, what's going on in Portland? Well, basically you have Antifa in Portland. You have all this chaos running amok on the streets. I'm so happy that President Trump is cleaning up the streets. I also want to talk about as well, I could not be happier that President Trump and Pete Hegseth are overhauling the U.S. military. Okay, you want to talk about go woke, go broke? We can't have this woke DEI stuff in the military anymore. Okay, if you're overweight, you're transgender, if you get out of breath walking up the stairs, how are you going to defend us from enemies, foreign and domestic? And we have these foreign enemies here on home ground in cities like Portland. We've seen the political extremism, the domestic violence going up. So we have to have a military that can work and get into shape. And I'm so happy that they're overhauling and getting the woke out of there.
Yeah, and Link, let me show you this quick video. It's of a Antifa protester who was there protesting against ICE and causing some trouble, getting wheeled out. Look at this.
They see me rolling, they hating, patrolling and trying to catch me riding dirty, 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 trying to catch me riding dirty. My music's so loud, I'm swinging.
Yes, Link, I'm there for it. I'm here for it. I would love to see the likes of, the eco-campaigners in London being treated the same way.
No, absolutely. I think maybe she needed a little bit of Ozempic or something, a little bit of Weight Watchers. But no, what's happening in Portland and in a lot of these cities, it's really an embarrassment. The United States should be the castle on the hill, the example. And so it's really great to see that we're coming in and cleaning up some of these cities, whether they want it or not.
Do you think Portland, just finally in 30 seconds, do you think Portland is on the brink of civil war, as some people are describing? Because you've got ICE agents doing battle with Antifa. I mean, it is properly kicking off, isn't it?
No, I don't think it's on the brink of civil war at all. I think it's going to get under control. We're in the midst of a government shutdown right now, but thankfully some money was appropriated beforehand so we can continue these deportations and fighting crime and cleaning up the streets.
Yeah.
I don't think there is going to be a civil war here on American soil, but we have to get rid of a lot of the homelessness and the crime and the drugs that are in our cities.
Link, thank you so much. Really pleased to speak to you again. Hopefully we'll catch up again next week. Link Lauren, former senior advisor to RFK Jr. Stick with us on The Late Show Live. More papers coming up. And I'm speaking to a top superstar in the US in a few minutes, Michael Shellenberger, on digital ID. Is Keir Starmer's big plan at risk of collapsing? I think so. Back in just a tick on The Late Show Live.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It was a stormy weekend for many of us, and there is still some cloud and rain around, but generally a more settled start to the new working week. Plenty of cloud, though, across western parts of Scotland. Some outbreaks of fairly persistent, mostly light rain and drizzle will continue as we go throughout the rest of Monday. Any mist and fog that we might have seen first thing across the very far south should clear, leaving plenty of sunny spells, perhaps quite a bit of prolonged sunshine across much of England and Wales through this afternoon. Fairly breezy across the very far northwest, but generally feeling much warmer than it did over the weekend. Highs in the south of 20, 21, perhaps even 22 degrees, and even across eastern parts of Scotland, we could see temperatures reaching into the low 20s. Still a cloudy and damp end to the day on Monday, though, across the very far west of Scotland. Outbreaks of perhaps slightly heavier rain arriving as we go through Monday evening, that pushing its way north and eastwards. Bit of a cloudy end to the day across parts of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England too, perhaps one or two clear spells developing in between, and still quite a lot of cloud around as well across parts of Wales and southwest England. Maybe some outbreaks of showery rain in places, but eastern areas generally holding on to some clearer spells, at least through the first part of the night. The heavier rain across western parts of Scotland pushes its way north and eastwards before this more organised band of rain arrives from the northwest, very slowly sinking its way south and eastwards into the early hours of Tuesday morning. But quite a bit more cloud around across much of England and Wales, and that generally means a milder night to come for all of us, temperatures quite widely holding up into the double figures. The area of rain across the northwest of Scotland continues to very slowly edge its way south and eastwards throughout much of Tuesday. Quite a bit more cloud around for much of England and Wales compared to what we saw on Monday, so not feeling quite as warm here. Maybe one or two brighter breaks or sunnier spells are possible, but the best of any sunshine definitely across the northwest of Scotland through Tuesday afternoon as that front clears through. But temperatures will be a little down compared to what we saw on Monday, but it will still feel pleasant if you do catch any sunshine.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
pissed. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tonight on The Late Show Live, is Keir Starmer's digital ID fantasy at risk of collapsing into oblivion? One of the world's leading freedom-fighting authors, Michael Shellenberger, joins me live next. Hello, good evening. It's Ben Leo on The Late Show Live. Tonight, a national day of shame. In breaking news tonight, it's been revealed universities all across Britain are bracing themselves for student-led Palestine protests on the anniversary of October the 7th, tomorrow. That's, of course, less than a week after the Manchester synagogue attack. Also tonight, is it any surprise our young people are so brainwashed when they consume this kind of nonsense from the virtual singer-in-chief, Gary Neville?
The division that's being created is absolutely disgusting. Mainly created by angry, middle-aged white men.
You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
Will digital ID lead the UK towards a dystopian nightmare? We'll be getting the take of the esteemed Michael Shellenberger next, one you don't want to miss. Elsewhere, a stalker comes just yards from Prince Harry during his recent trip to the UK. We'll have all the details very shortly. And, of course, we'll be diving headfirst into the stories from tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hours before they hit the shelves back in Blighty. And, of course, we're live in Washington, D.C., just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories America's talking about and that matter to Britain too, including this one.
God bless the United States Navy.
Yes, President Trump celebrates the 250th anniversary of the United States Navy, and in China, God, look at that. It's a beaut. The mega bridge of dreams. China unveils the world's tallest bridge, but here in Britain, we'd be lucky, I guess, to have a motorway overpass built in, what, 3, 4, 5 years? Also, you won't believe what else that bridge in China has to offer. I'm Ben Leo. This is The Late Show Live, and welcome to the second hour where the stories get hotter, the pace gets a little bit faster, and the brakes, of course, have been dropped. Don't go anywhere. Good evening, welcome along. So Keir Starmer's pressing ahead with his plan to roll out digital ID across the UK, and under the proposal, all UK citizens and legal residents aged 16 and over will be required to hold the national ID card. It was Tony Blair's fantasy, wasn't it, some decades ago. Now Keir Starmer is doing his dirty work for him. If you want to work back home in the UK, you have to have a national ID card. But critics have branded the scheme a dystopian nightmare, warning of potential hacking risks and threats to privacy as well. I'd argue threats to our very existence and freedom. Even members of the Prime Minister's own cabinet have criticised the move, and millions of Brits have signed a petition opposing it. Well, let's get the take of one of the best freedom fighter authors and journalists in the world. He's Michael Shellenberger, and I'm delighted to say he joins me live now. Michael, thank you for your company. Really appreciate it. Can you just explain, in layman's terms, for people who may not fully grasp the severity of this situation, why digital ID is such a problem?
Sure, and Ben, great to be with you. I think the thing you have to remember about this is that this is not just about having an identification online. This is fundamentally about the centralization of your personal data in ways that it's very easy to imagine governments abusing. So the full, like the nightmare trinity is the marriage of your bank account, your social media platform, and your medical records. And you might think, well, but nobody's, proposing that right now. But these are all links in a chain that are being connected. And in fact, we saw Palantir UK, Palantir United States has shown a huge amount of interest in this. The wonderful public backlash against it led Palantir to distance itself from digital IDs. But we even saw Lewis Mosley, the British head of Palantir, say that they still hold out hope for the harmonization of data. This is a hacker's dream. It's a cybersecurity nightmare. Imagine somebody being able to hack into one of your online accounts. Okay, that's bad enough. But imagine them then getting access to all of your other accounts. That's what's at stake here. I think the cybersecurity argument, which honestly I wasn't even really aware of until recently, is going to be the poison pill of digital IDs. But I do think it's going to require the public demanding that these big tech companies make a pledge not to pursue this digital nightmare, this digital totalitarianism.
Michael, is it just about hacking though and protecting your data? Is there, there are concerns that some people say the UK is maybe 10, 20 years behind China with a social credit system, social credit scores, and unless you're an obedient little citizen, you won't be allowed to travel or you won't be allowed to gain access to financial services.
It's easy to imagine this, right? If the UK is arresting the comedian Graham Linehan when on his arrival at the airport, imagine in the future that they just don't let him fly because of what he said on social media, or imagine they freeze his bank account, or take away money, or you could even imagine them starting with something like rewards for being an upstanding member of the community, for however they want to define it, and then taking away those rewards when you criticize the government or when you when you publish whistleblowers. You can imagine a million different ways in which the power to control your digital identity through your social media, your bank account, and your health records could easily lead a future government, if not the current governments, to using it to punish dissent. And ultimately, I just think, if once you have a digital ID like that in place, we're no longer free citizens. I think we're no better than digital slaves in a digital system, a digital totalitarian system.
Yeah, welcome to the Matrix. Michael, some viewers at home back in the UK may not be familiar with you, but let me just reaffirm, you are one of the leading freedom fighters of the world, top author, millions of followers on social media as well. So what you say, without blowing smoke up your backside, if you don't mind, what you say does have some weight. I want your opinion, please, your thoughts on the state of free speech in Britain from where you sit. Do you think we have free speech in the UK?
No, hugely troubling. And of course, your friends across the pond, we're all very worried about what we see happening in Britain. It's big news here. Of course, the ideas of free speech come from Britain, and that's where we got our strong value of free speech. These, 30 arrests a day, the arrest of Graham Linehan, and frankly, it goes against right and left, people expressing the wrong opinions on the street. This is all terrifying. So it's in that context that when your prime minister comes out and says everybody's got to have a digital ID, I think everybody's rightly paranoid about that. I mean, that's coming, and it's not coming out of nowhere. It's coming out of many years. This Online Safety Act. It comes out of this idea that hurting someone's feelings is the same as physical violence. Unfortunately, this is happening across the West. In the United States, we see 1/3 of college students say that violence may be necessary to stop a controversial campus speaker. So I'm afraid that the attack on free speech is coming both from the top, from leaders like Keir Starmer, and unfortunately from a culture, from an intolerant culture that imagines emotional harm to be the same as bad, or if not worse, than physical harm.
Talking of free speech, I broke on my show earlier tonight about the fact that tomorrow now in the UK is October the 7th. Of course, it's the second anniversary of the attacks in Israel, which 1,200 people were murdered by Hamas. All across the UK, in university campuses, college campuses, students are leading massive rallies and protests to mark that second anniversary. Of course, they're allowed to do that. It's free speech. But what's your thoughts on that? Does the UK maybe need to clamp down on this kind of uber-liberal approach rotting our universities, much like President Trump did with Columbia and Brown and Harvard?
I mean, I would say definitely not. As long as that speech is being done in a peaceful way, if it's not being used to immediately incite violence against people, and it has to be very immediate, it has to be, go and cause harm to that person over there, of course it should be protected. I'm concerned that President Trump undermined his push for free speech by using the expressions of solidarity with Palestinians, including with Hamas, loathsome organization, but nonetheless, the whole tradition of free speech is that we want people to express their ugly, hateful thoughts so we can talk back to them. There's no other way to counter hate speech than with free speech. And so for me, it's no longer a left-right issue. Free speech never really should have been. It's something that we all need to fight for because it's certainly being abused in both directions right now.
Yeah. Michael, just finally, you can just answer very briefly if you like. Are you a free speech absolutist? I.e., would it be okay for people to call for violence or whatever? Are you a free speech absolutist, or does free speech have limits? And if so, if it does have limits, is it really free speech?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that the Supreme Court of the United States has done a really great job. I think the First Amendment was a really radical, necessary amendment to our Constitution. It's written in an absolute way, the First Amendment, and then over time, the last 200 years, the Supreme Court has carved out a few exceptions. We also don't allow defamation, people deliberately trying to destroy your reputation. We don't allow libel or fraud in the use of language, and we don't allow immediate incitement to violence. You had a case there in Britain of Lucy Connolly, who called for essentially attacking the immigrant hostels or places where the immigrants were staying in Britain after the killing of those 3 girls at a Taylor Swift event. And, I think it was sort of on the line. I think that the punishment was too strong, but I think that, it's the immediacy that really matters here. It's not just the calling for violence, because I think certainly one could say...
Can I tell you exactly what Lucy said and get your thoughts? Sorry to interrupt. Can I tell you exactly what Lucy Connolly tweeted? I'll get your thoughts. I'd love to know. So she tweeted, burn the migrant hotels down for all I care. The caveat being for all I care. I mean, in your opinion, is that inciting violence? For me, it just shows that she was saying, I'm indifferent to what happens, I don't care. And she deleted the tweet 4 hours later. But yes, she was banged up for 2.5 years in prison.
I think where I'm at on that tweet is I think that the platforms should take it down as immediate incitement to violence. But I don't think anything approaching the punishment she had. I mean, she went to prison. She's taken away from her family. That's bonkers. That's really crazy, particularly since you can't tie any real-world violence to that tweet or that Facebook post. But nonetheless, I do think that the platforms should take it down, because for me, it was happening in the moment of these protests and riots. So I do think it could be argued that it was immediate. I objected to the sentence. I thought it was an abuse of power by the government. But yeah, when you say burn the hotels down right now, I think that for me, that crosses a line.
Yeah. OK, Michael, thank you. Really interesting conversation. I appreciate your time very much, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon. Michael Shellenberger, one of the best freedom fighter authors and journalists in the world. Let us know what you think on that. gbnews.com/you'll say. Lots of you praising Michael a bit on the show. Deborah, you've said, I love Michael Shellenberger. Started watching him on his Substack a while ago. Plenty of others as well. Glad you enjoyed. Well done. Let's get a take now of my panel, the Democrats Party strategist, Bob Weiner, and the Daily Mail's US political reporter, Victoria Churchill. Welcome back, panel. Bob, Michael seemed to agree with you on the Trump point there about free speech, kind of maybe overdoing it a bit.
Well, I think Trump himself is violating the tenets that should have some limits on free speech when he talks about the enemies within cities and making the cities training grounds for the military.
Keir Starmer said that. Keir Starmer called Farage the enemy.
And then we have to have fair elections, and he ties it all together so he can set up this National Guard, whole array of police that are going to block people from and intimidate people against elections. That's what he's trying to do. And for ICE, that's not free speech when they come down and they take away naked children and they take away black and brown people just because they're black and brown.
Are they not illegals though?
They were not illegals. They didn't check. They didn't ask. They were saying that they were legal. They were saying they were citizens, and ICE took them anyway.
How did you know? Were you there?
The reports on MSNBC and CNN.
Oh, MSNBC and CNN. Really, the bastions of truth, Bob.
They try.
Bob, I tuned in. I arrived in Washington 5
Sure
weeks
not gonna
ago.
get it from Fox.
I turned on MSNBC because the Fox News channel I was trying to watch was interrupted by signal. Actually, I watch all the channels just to get a breadth of ideas. You know, I'm not just living in an echo chamber. But I watched MSNBC. And they had a 5-person panel. And by the way, this would never happen in the UK. This would be totally illegal. They had a 5-person panel. The first guy said that Trump was an authoritarian dictator. The second person said that January the 6th was on par with Pearl Harbor and 9/11. And the other 3 liberals sat there clapping like seals. It was the most biased, biased
they
bit
need
of TV
balance.
I've ever seen in my life.
I agree with that. And I've been on Fox like a dozen times. I mean, fair and balanced, it means something. It should mean something. And what you do, you obviously on your show, you allow both sides to be speaking and to make their cases. So I think that's exactly what you have to do. And congratulations to GBN for doing that.
And then I shout you down.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine.
Victoria, what do you make of digital ID? Could you ever imagine it here in the United States? Would people stand for it?
No, I mean, it's absolutely Orwellian, and I can't believe that Starmer is really doubling down on this because public opinion, at least from what I've seen in the UK, is completely against this. And I think, as you pointed out in the start of the segment, even some of his own cabinet members are against it. And so I think it shows, how much in the pocket he is of organizations like the World Economic Forum and, this whole globalization idea and how much they want to implement that agenda in the UK. And, he's just letting them run over him, really. And I don't think he's standing up for the people that elected him.
So I'm not sure if you know, but this was Tony Blair's idea 20 years ago. So it gets me thinking. This isn't just some off-the-cuff thing that the Labour Party have come up with in the past year or so since taking power. It wasn't even in their manifesto during the election last year. And Tony Blair, of course, is still highly influential on the Labour Party and indeed Keir Starmer. So what's going on there? Is this a 20-odd year plan to get digital ID into Britain, or at least a 20-year ambition? And if so, for what? What is the end goal?
I mean, I think the end goal is total control. Obviously, systems have become a lot more accessible, and so I think, kind of this universalization of data, and we have it here as an issue in the U.S., right? Like data brokers selling your data, you get 25 random phone calls a day from numbers that you never know, and they somehow got a hold of your information. But when the government gets a hold of that information, which I think that's an important distinction, right? Of public companies.
Elon Musk has made that happen. And voter ID is a real thing in the United States, by the way. There is a movement toward it. So it's not just in Britain, it's everywhere. And once there's voter ID, that's going to be digital also. They're going to have all power of the digital on it.
So voter ID is what? You need to show your ID when you get to the ballot box?
Correct, but then it's digitally captured and it's everywhere.
What's wrong with that?
I didn't say there was something wrong with it. But it does make it more difficult for some people to vote who don't have that power of getting it, and they're going to have to work at it.
But what? Yeah, I hear this argument. So who?
It's not a good argument.
So who can't find ID? I mean, which people are we talking about? Why is it so
I don't make the argument.
Do you know, Victoria?
Well, I just want to say that I have actually gone and worked the polls on Election Day, and at least in Virginia, the computers don't actually transmit beyond, kind of they're hooked up. The computers are hooked up to the voting machines, and that's kind of the only interfacing that happens. And then the data from the voting machines gets transmitted later on, but the IDs are scanned on individual laptops that are provided by the county where I did it, Arlington County. And that data isn't stored, isn't transferred. Only the data about the vote itself is what gets transferred. So I'm not quite sure where Bob's getting his ideas.
Yeah.
That, they're hooked up to this central system where anybody can get a hold of it.
Well, the court's knocked down Elon Musk from getting the Social Security data and all of that he tried to get. But
Elon's gone now. The Tesla and his companies were tanking, so I think he saw the light and he thought, well, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to stop yapping my mouth about politics. gbnews.com/your say. James, on digital ID, you've said no chance of getting digital ID passed in this country. We are not stupid. Yes, James, we're not stupid, and this is an issue which entails the left and the right, red, blue, reform, whoever. It's not a left-right issue. It's people with common sense who can see what's coming down the line. I thoroughly agree. And Shelley, good evening, Shelley. You've said Lucy may have been wrong in what she said, but it was said in frustration, and we've been really overwhelmed with the illegals, and it's terrifying for us women knowing how these migrants are. The absolute worst thing in my book is that illegal migrants have gotten away with less time for rape. Yeah, indeed. I mean, the Lucy Connolly story, the context and the background just explains why she fired off that tweet. Anyway, still ahead on The Late Show Live, Kamala Harris, remember her? She's back again, making the headlines. Oh dear. We'll unpack her latest round of Trump derangement syndrome shortly. We'll get Bob's thoughts on Kamala as well, and whether she was the right person for the job last year. If they'd gone with, I don't know, Shapiro, Gavin Newsom, would we have a Democratic government in power now? I don't think so, but we'll get stuck in. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, a story that gets me pretty wound up. A former SAS officer has warned that treating soldiers like common criminals over war crimes investigations is undermining morale and damaging Britain's reputation on the global stage. The retired SAS officer has been warned that the US military is questioning whether the British can be relied on in battle, given the fear of persecution hanging over their heads. Well, let's get the take of former British military spokesman and geopolitical defence commentator Mike Shearer. Mike, just explain, please, if viewers aren't sort of caught up with what's going on here. Basically, in a nutshell, am I right? The UK courts are going after SAS soldiers for so-called crimes they committed when on tour in the likes of Afghanistan, right? What's going on?
No, that's absolutely right, Ben. And beyond, just soldiers in general. And I would say that I would just rather that soldiers were investigated by the military and, if deemed necessary, then put to a court-martial. The truth is, civilian judges simply cannot get their mind around military situations. The fog of war, the heat of battle, when things are moving at the speed of light and people's lives are in danger, they cannot comprehend that. And I'm of the firm belief that if there is an idea that a soldier has broken military law within the laws of armed conflict, then that should be looked at by a court-martial and dealt with by the military, because I'm sorry, a civilian panel just won't be able to fairly judge that.
Well, yeah, exactly. Why would they be able to judge it? They've never been on tour, they've never fired a weapon, they don't know what it's like in the heat of battle, they don't know what it's like trekking hundreds of miles a day with no sleep and hiking up mountains. They have not got a bloody clue. And in this, the Times story, so he's called Soldier Z, and he's spoken for the first time ever to the Times tomorrow since leaving the SAS. He said, and I quote, "We disrupt hundreds of attacks in the UK. We spend hundreds of hours hunting people. We're held in such high regard overseas, and yet here we are, made to feel like murderers." During a 25-year military career that spanned almost all post-9/11 hotspots, he said he's faced police questioning over 5 incidents, mainly shootings in Iraq. I mean, have the police got not better things to do in the UK than going after SAS veterans who have been dealing with stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan?
It's a shocker. And look, you will remember just probably about 18 months ago, Ben, we had that weasel of a man, Phil Shiner, an ambulance chasing lawyer who was had many soldiers on his books, and eventually, when he was challenged, it was found that he was just that. It was all fictitious. Now, this is a lawyer just trying to make a few extra bucks, really, at the expense and the agony of a soldier's family, mental well-being, career, etc., etc. It should be left entirely to the military. Look, the military, if a soldier has done something out with the confines of the military justice system, they will be dealt with. Look, we go into great pains in the British Army with our values and standards. We demand selfless commitment, demand it. We demand respect for others. We demand loyalty. We demand integrity. We demand discipline. We demand courage, both physical and mental. And that moral courage, I should say, having the ability to stand up amongst your peers and say no. Honestly, we are world leaders at this stuff. We don't need civilian judges waving a finger in a soldier's face when they have absolutely no feel for the situation.
Yeah, I think it's a disgrace. Mike, before I let you go, I was down on the Arizona border the other day speaking. A sheriff was showing us round to do with an immigration piece. He was former Special Forces. And we had a bit of a back and forth about who the best Special Forces team in the world is. I mean, I argue, and lots of countries all around the world would say as well, it's the SAS. But he was saying, no, I think SEAL team, maybe DevGru here in the US, slightly pipped the SAS. Is the SAS the top supreme Special Forces team in the world? If so, why?
I mean, it's a no-brainer, this one. I'm sorry. And our American cousins are very, very good, okay? They are. There's no question about it. But look, what I would ask is any of the American Special Forces that have come across and ran alongside our Special Air Services when they are in training to pass the course, they're the people to ask. Ask them, and I know what they'll say. The training that we give them is, and the standards that they're put under is second to none. Second to none. So I think you know the answer to that.
Good to hear. I do know the answer. It's the SAS every day, all day, every week, every year. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Mike Shearer, former British military spokesman and geopolitical defence commentator. Thank you, my friend. Right, let's get the thoughts from our panel. Democrat strategist Bob Weiner and the Daily Mail's US political reporter Victoria Churchill. What do you make of this, Bob, when you hear about how we've got war veterans, not just war veterans, special forces going behind enemy lines, working in the dead of night, now being persecuted, prosecuted and spoken to by bobbies, policemen in the UK over what happened abroad?
Well, I think you have to respect those special forces. I think they are remarkable. And by the way, I didn't hear, and in the comparison, the Israeli special forces, which are also extraordinarily good. So I think that, and ours got Bin Laden. So, you know, those things work.
Rob O'Neill, his name was it? Rob O'Neill? Yeah.
So I think you have to respect them, and they are heroes, as long as they don't cross the war of engagement lines. They are heroes.
I'm embarrassed to see our Special Forces heroes persecuted like this. Has it ever happened in the US, can you remember?
Well, you know, I can't think of any instances off the top of my head, but again, you know, military courts exist for a reason because they have an understanding, at least a greater understanding than any civilian court ever would about the sheer force mentally that an impact of a deployment has that nobody in a civilian court could ever imagine. And, you know, I think we need to let the military deal with any transgressions that they believe may have occurred. And, you know, I think is kind of a parallel, right? Like we've got the UN and the International Criminal Court saying that Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal for his actions in Gaza. And, you know, I think that just goes to show that civilians don't really have any concept of military conflict.
But it does happen. Blackstone in Afghanistan went in and got civilians and women and children, and they killed them. And so when that happens, there are military courts that deal with it, and that's important.
Well, yeah, you mentioned Afghanistan. So one of the main situations with the SAS and Special Forces from UK Special Forces was the so-called night raids, where the SAS would be sent out on night raids on villages. They'd be looking for Taliban members, kicking down doors. And in the dead of night, unfortunately, sometimes some people would be collateral damage. But now hordes of those soldiers who, I'll just reiterate, put their lives on the line defending this country, not only abroad, in terror attacks. The SAS land, I was at London Bridge in 2017 when Islamists went stabbing people down at Borough Market. Within minutes, the SAS landed a chopper on, I think it was London Bridge as far as I remember, cleaning out miles and miles of underground networks, tube stations and so on. They are the best of the best, and I just think it's an absolute disgrace the way we have, A, the way the country treats them, but B, the fact they've got to deal with policemen who are probably more accustomed to knocking on people's doors about social media posts, asking what they were doing in Afghanistan or Iraq. I mean, what an insult. I think it's disgusting.
Just be careful of the kill-happy warrior, though. There is such a thing, and that has to be protected against.
Well, I'd argue the SAS are, you know, they are trained killers. Yeah. Like, they're trained killers. So, I mean, unfortunately, sadly, collateral damage happens, but they are the best of the best. Gary, you've said on your say, good evening, Gary. Thank you for your company. You said Mike Shearer is bang on the nail. The military should deal with any accusation of wrongdoing under the King's regulations by anyone who's accused of wrongdoing while serving a tour of duty. Nick, good evening, Nick. You're still with us. Thank you. You said, Ben, I'm totally disgusted that we're doing this. It makes me feel ashamed to be British when we are prosecuting our military heroes. And Paul, you said absolutely right. We have the best trained armed forces in the world. It's a pity their equipment isn't the best. Thank you for those comments. Keep them coming in. gbnews.com/your say. Still ahead on The Late Show Live. Tonight we'll bring you all of the front pages and the biggest stories making the headlines in the papers tomorrow. This is The Late Show Live. Back in just a tick on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It was a stormy weekend for many of us, and there is still some cloud and rain around, but generally a more settled start to the new working week. Plenty of cloud though across western parts of Scotland. Some outbreaks of fairly persistent, mostly light rain and drizzle will continue as we go throughout the rest of Monday. Any mist and fog that we might have seen first thing across the very far south should clear, leaving plenty of sunny spells, perhaps quite a bit of prolonged sunshine across much of England and Wales through this afternoon. Fairly breezy across the very far northwest, but generally feeling much warmer than it did over the weekend. Highs in the south of 20, 21, perhaps even 22 degrees, and even across eastern parts of Scotland, we could see temperatures reaching into the low 20s. Still a cloudy and damp end to the day on Monday, though, across the very far west of Scotland. Outbreaks of perhaps slightly heavier rain arriving as we go through Monday evening, that pushing its way north and eastwards. A bit of a cloudy end to the day across parts of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England too, perhaps one or two clear spells developing in between, and still quite a lot of cloud around as well across parts of Wales and southwest England. Maybe some outbreaks of showery rain in places, but eastern areas generally holding on to some clearer spells, at least through the first part of the night. The heavier rain across western parts of Scotland pushes its way north and eastwards before this more organised band of rain arrives from the northwest, very slowly sinking its way south and eastwards into the early hours of Tuesday morning. But quite a bit more cloud around across much of England and Wales, and that generally means a milder night to come for all of us, temperatures quite widely holding up into the double figures. The area of rain across the northwest of Scotland continues to very slowly edge its way south and eastwards throughout much of Tuesday. Quite a bit more cloud around for much of England and Wales compared to what we saw on Monday, so not feeling quite as warm here. Maybe one or two brighter breaks or sunnier spells are possible, but the best of any sunshine definitely across the northwest of Scotland through Tuesday afternoon as that front clears through. But temperatures will be a little down compared to what we saw on Monday, but it will still feel pleasant if you do catch any sunshine.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello Hello, welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'm Ben Leo. Let's take a look at the newspaper front pages hitting the shelves tomorrow, starting with The Telegraph. The headline reads, Prime Minister must come clean over China. That's according to the Tories. And only British citizens will be able to claim benefits, says Sir Mel Stride. It's, of course, the second day of the Tory conference in Manchester tomorrow. Or today, rather. Later today. It's Monday, isn't it now? The Mirror. Don't use our flag to divide us. This comes off the back of, I guess, Gary Neville saying that it's angry middle-aged white men who are causing division. Yeah, Gary, nothing to do with 50,000 strange men from faraway lands coming into the country. You don't know who they are, what their intentions are. Nothing to do with the scores of Islamist attacks on British people over the years. School children blown up in Manchester, Jews knifed to death in Manchester as well, people knifed to death on nights out in London. That doesn't cause division, does it? No, it's angry middle-aged white men who want to fly their flag and be a bit patriotic. The Guardian. Alarm over Minister's plan to give police more anti-protest powers. The Metro. PM's bid to end the agony for house buyers who get gazumped. So gazumping, as far as I remember, is where you agree to buy a house, you get far down the line, you've not exchanged contracts yet, but at the very last minute, the seller will say, look, I want 10 grand more, or I'm pulling the sale, or someone else comes in and offers more money. We need something like Scotland, I think, where in Scotland, once you agree as far as I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, once you agree a price and you make an offer and it's accepted, you're contractually bound to buy the house. The Mail tomorrow. The Prime Minister's security chief faces MPs over grilling. MPs grilling over China spy scandal. So this China story just rolls on. The finger pointed at Jonathan Powell as Commons' espionage case collapses. The New York Post. Insensitive Meghan Markle lounges with her feet up near Princess Diana crash site in bizarre video. I said in the last hour, I've seen the video. I mean, I think you're clutching at straws. I'm not a massive Meghan fan, but I think this is pushing it a bit. And the Washington Post. Supreme Court and President Trump are headed for a new reckoning in the new term. After months of emergency rulings, the justices will be asked to render final verdicts on economic and immigration policies at the core of Trump's presidency. Let's get the take of comedian and GB News superstar Paul Cox on those front pages. I'll bring in the panel as well in just a minute so we can talk to Paul. Paul, what do you fancy this hour?
Well, do you know what? I was torn between the China thing and the front of the page of The Guardian. I don't normally like to talk about The Guardian, but it is the second anniversary tomorrow of the terrible, heinous attacks in Israel, where over 1,200 Jewish Israelis were raped, murdered, and all sorts of other disgusting things. And I think it's interesting that the Guardian kind of leads on this, saying rallies held before 2-year anniversary of Hamas attack. And fair play to the Guardian, because they're doing something I wouldn't expect of them. They're drawing attention to the fact that this was a terrorist attack that led to all of the problems that are currently going on in Israel, and they're talking about that 2-year anniversary. They're also talking about the alarm over Minister's plan to give police more anti-protest powers. Now, I'm not, I'm against squashing protests, but what I am for, particularly this week, is decorum. We have seen a complete lack of decorum when it comes to these protests with regards to pro-Hamas and anti-Israel, anti-Jew, anti-Semitic sentiment. This week, we could have at least taken a day off from those idiots.
Yeah, I agree. And I wouldn't want these protests shut down because I believe in free speech. But I do think that, as you said, with a slice of decorum, you could make yourself and your argument appear much more weighty by just waiting a few days. Give it a week or two after Manchester, and definitely do not do it on October the 7th. But because for me, I see that kind of thing, and it just makes me not want to listen to your argument. Of course, there's a situation going on with Israel. There's an argument that they need to stop bombing Gaza as bad as they are. There is a valid argument there, and there's serious questions. Sure. But when you see the likes of universities all across Britain tomorrow on October the 7th holding rallies on October the 7th, all across Britain, even the commies, the Revolutionary Communist Party at Sheffield, it just makes me not want to listen to any of you. Same with we had the same thing with Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. You are so inane, you are so juvenile and such a bloody nuisance that you put me off listening to any otherwise valid, justified environmental argument.
And it's well worth pointing out that there are some very well-meaning people within those marches and protests that genuinely are appalled by what they're seeing in Gaza. And they, you know, there's a lot of weight to their argument. But there's also a lot of, and a great deal, should I say, of anti-Semitism within those marches. There's hate being spilled all the time. There's some disgusting things that are being said about the Jewish people, including wiping them from the face of the earth. I think we could have done without that for an evening, particularly last Thursday, and we certainly could do with it on the 7th on Tuesday. And you're absolutely right, Ben. No one, particularly here at GB News, wants to see the end of protest. In fact, we'd fight to the death for it, even for the views that we disagree with. But I go back to my main point, and that is that we need to see some decorum in these debates, and we just haven't seen it this week.
Yeah, well said, Paul. Before I invite my panel to have a chat with you, Paul, Bob Weiner and Victoria Churchill, Martin on gbnews.com/You'll Say, Paul, said, Ben, I know you're a gooner, but I'll buy you a pint if you can get Paul to say, play up on live TV. Pompey fan, get him to weave it in somewhere.
OK, I'll just do it now. Play up Pompey. I know exactly what he's talking about. Here's to all the Blues out there. Good on you. You're a gooner, are you, Ben? Nothing too wrong with that, I guess, mate. I mean, I'm a Portsmouth fan. The only people we really dislike is Southampton. But there you go. What can I say?
Well, yeah, me too. Yeah, top of the league, Paul, top of the league. Play up, Pompey, play up. Have you still got the guy with the bell in the
We do have Johnny Westwood down there. He splits opinion somewhat, but Johnny Westwood very much is part of the Pompey fan group still.
All right, we've hijacked the show. We're talking about football, but let's bring in the panel. Bob Weiner and Victoria Churchill, welcome along. Any questions for Paul on the front pages today? What about the process? Paul, do you want to stick with the process?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm very interested. I mean, before we go to Victoria, who's going to have an absolutely brilliant opinion on this, let's hear from Bob Weiner to see what Bob has to say, because I do love you, Bob, but you've normally say something that's...
opinion of Victoria.
I can't wait to hear what Bob's got to say about this.
Point. Even the women had the major. Even the women had the major protest a day after Trump's first inauguration. They knew enough to wait the day. And that's what my memory serves me on that. And I think it's completely out of taste and a real outrage that they would do it on the day of October 7th. So I totally agree with you on that.
Oh, thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, I think it's totally tone deaf that they have these protests there. But, you know, again, I think like many of the people like yourself, like Michael Schellenberger, who we heard from earlier, the issue with the crackdown is that, you know, I think everybody here wants to see free speech. We want to see a return to civil debate, civil discussion, much like Bob and I are participating in here tonight on the show. Despite our disagreements, you know, we want to have disagreements. We want to be civil, but you know, I think at these protests, we can't really have that open debate. And I really don't see too much of the other side having peaceful demonstrations. And so I think when one side is peaceful and the other side is raging through the streets or raging on campuses, it does make you want to listen to the peaceful side a lot more than the part that's angry.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well said. Paul, I'm not sure if you're aware of this story, but Boris Johnson, it's breaking tonight in the papers tomorrow. Boris Johnson said that he went, quote, too far and too fast on net zero when he was Prime Minister and was carried away by the notion that renewable energy sources could replace fossil fuels. Do you believe him? And also, is he making a comeback?
I think he'd like to make a comeback. I don't know if that will do the Tories any good whatsoever, because I think that horse is well and truly bolted. I also believe that he did go too far. My understanding, if Dominic Cummings is right, is that he listened far too much to Carey, i.e. he got carried away. And as a result, we ended up pushing this ridiculous arbitrary date of 2030 or 2050 or whatever it was. We're all galloping towards that, spending money we don't have to deliver something that's going to make absolutely zero difference or 0.01% difference to the overall carbon output on planet Earth. It's not the thing to do. I don't think our economy within the UK can afford to do it. I'm pretty sure the US feel the same way too. I'm not saying that we chuck the baby out with the bathwater here. We need a smorgasbord smorgasbord of energy solutions available to us all. And we also need energy sovereignty. They've got energy sovereignty in the US. We don't have energy sovereignty in the UK. We could do. We don't. In fact, we're inadvertently funding Russia's invasion of the Ukraine by buying energy from the French, who are buying it from the Russians. So we are both fighting an invasion, a war in Ukraine, that we are funding at the same time.
Yeah, such a good point. But of course, this side of the ponds, they drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill.
Texas, there's fracking going on all over the place. Bob, are you a supporter of fracking? What's the consensus in America on fracking?
Fracking has helped us to become energy independent, and it's sort of a compromise that has been made, and I think it's a good one as long as you make sure that you're not putting it in so deep and so poorly that it causes earthquakes. You have to check the environmental impact, but fracking is really a remarkable achievement that has helped us to achieve energy independence. So I'm for it.
And just before I go to Victoria, you mentioned you compared Boris Johnson's, I mean, is he making a comeback? I don't know, but the mooted comeback to Nixon. Just explain what happened to Nixon.
Well, Nixon, you couldn't have him to kick around anymore, and then a few years later, there he was. He's president of the United States. He lost for governor, then he wins for president of the United States. So I'm shocked. But you raised Kamala Harris earlier. She wants to do the same thing. I didn't think she was going to be able to make a comeback. Perhaps she will.
Victoria, could you see Boris Johnson making a comeback and indeed maybe doing a Nixon and becoming Prime Minister one day?
You know, I don't think that's the way that the UK is going. I don't know if the Conservative Party would nominate him as their leader again. But again, I don't really see that happening in the future. But that all of the above energy approach is definitely what we're seeing the U.S. government under President Trump embracing. One thing that I noticed was quite notable earlier in his term, he elevated his energy secretary to a cabinet level position. This hasn't traditionally been a cabinet level position, which I think really underscores the value that the Trump administration puts on energy as it's tied to national security. And I think that really goes along with what Paul was just talking about. Energy, buying energy, and who you're buying it from really does matter in the global context. And so, the Trump administration, I think, is putting pressure on the likes of, I believe it was India just a couple weeks ago, because they're doing very much of the same. They're buying this oil from allies or from countries, that are not allies. They're adversaries of both the U.S. and the U.K., particularly when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war.
Yeah.
But we can't have our head in the sands either. We can't have people claiming that windmills are deadly and are killing birds at a rate that's outrageous. I mean, it gets a little silly.
But just an eyesore as far as I'm concerned. Paul, Mike E. on Your Say has said, what rubbish. We all need to do our bit to save the planet so we can pass on a cleaner planet onto the next generations. How hypocritical.
Well, Mike is on E, I think. We're past that point. we are past that point. Now, Mike, I understand. I'm going to talk directly to you now, Mike. Thank you for contributing. We welcome all views here on GB News. But I'm afraid, mate, that we cannot afford to do it. Energy has to be sustainable. The economy has to be sustainable. We still have to be able to afford to run our economy and look after our people. And we can't do that if we abandon the complete mission and go complete woo-woo and just wind and nothing else, solar and nothing else. And we do need sovereignty. We are on the verge of World War III. Following the Russian invasion in Ukraine, following what's going on in the Middle East, we need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet, and we cannot do that if we go down this route.
Paul, you are a man of the people. Hang tight, because I want to show you, the panel, the viewers and the listeners. I mean, the listeners will have to just guess what they're listening to. But I want to show you China's tallest ever bridge. Take a look. Sight to behold. So, Paul, the bridge is twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. It cuts a 2-hour commute to 2 minutes. Also has a coffee shop, a glass elevator, and will serve as a base for bungee jumping as well, and paragliding, rather you than me. It only took them 3.5 years to build as well, which is the main point. 3.5 years. Can you imagine how long it would take us to build that in the UK? I mean, talking of Pompey and Southampton, Paul, I remember the 50-mile-an-hour zones, the construction down was at the M25, not the 23, whatever the motorway is. It
27.
was there for 8 years.
Still there to this day. On the M27, it's still there. It's supposed to be completed about 10 years ago. It's still going to be completed next year. I don't want to criticise Highway England because I use the highways quite a lot, but that is terrible. We wouldn't. I mean, I can't imagine what policy and bureaucracy they must bypass in order to do that. We certainly don't have the systems within this country. I don't know whether the same would apply in the States. I'd imagine it does. But we simply wouldn't be able to bypass any of the local council policies, any of the local council health and safety rulings, anything to achieve that. We don't have the contractors to achieve that. We would get caught up in all sorts of red tape. It just wouldn't happen in this country. I mean, fair play to China. By the way, whether we like it or not, they're our political enemies, and they are light years ahead of us in terms of achieving and delivering things. If we are ever on a war footing with that country, all of us are in a bit of trouble, I think.
Yeah, they just get things done, which I argue that's what President Trump's doing now. He's just getting things done. Right, I'm going to bring in the panel again after this moment from Kamala Harris today, of course, the former presidential candidate from the Democrats. She took over from Joe Biden. Anyway, she's back and she's causing a bit of a stir. Take a look.
It was the tightest, closest presidential election in the 21st century. He does not have a mandate.
OK, Bob Weiner, she was saying it was the tightest, closest election. I mean, last time I checked, I think he won the popular vote and stormed the Electoral College, no? I mean, what's wrong with her?
By 1.5 points. So she's got a point, but she's not correct that he didn't have an enormous electoral vote victory.
Hang on, what's her point? Just explain, 'cause I'm lost.
Her point is that the Congress is almost evenly divided, the Senate and the House are almost evenly divided, and that the country is pretty much evenly divided.
And she reckons it was the tightest. I mean, it wasn't the tightest, closest election. The tightest, closest election was what? Bush and Al Gore.
Yeah, Bush.
What was that? 200 votes? That's a tight election.
Right.
Not getting wiped out in all the swing states and then losing the popular vote as well.
Right.
So is she wrong, do you think?
Yeah, I think she can't say it's the closest ever, but it was only 1.5 points.
She likes to drink, doesn't she, Kamala?
You know, I'll never make it in her good list if I say what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say what I said off camera anyway. She talks nasal, and she's not a great speaker, and that was one of her serious problems.
I know someone else like that, Keir Starmer. Victoria, what's your take on Kamala? What's she doing? She's trying to make a big comeback?
Well, I think there's absolutely nobody in the Democrat Party that wants to listen to Kamala Harris. Bob might have a little bit better finger on the pulse of the Democrat Party, but at least from my perspective, I don't think anybody wants her. They're all looking to see who their next leader is. You know, the Republicans have been hitting the Democrats this week on, you know, the pressure that they're facing, particularly from the younger, more progressive wing of the party. You know, they're saying that Chuck Schumer, who's the Democrat Senate Minority Leader right now, part of his reasoning for having the government shut down is because he doesn't want a primary from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in his home state of New York. And so, you know, behind the scenes, you have people like that who are definitely, I think, pulling the strings in the Democrat Party. And, you know, again, I just want to say, I covered the swing states last year for the election. I traveled to a number of them, and I went to dozens, if not several dozen, rallies with Trump and Vance all across these swing states and communities. And, you know, one of their consistent messages that they had during all of those events was this idea of too big to rig, that they wanted to go ahead and win every single swing state, that there was absolutely no doubt on Election Day, and that the election was decided pretty early on Election Day, that there was no doubt that the Republicans were victorious. And, you know, their ideas were really prophecy. That's exactly what happened on Election Day.
Yeah, Kamala saying that Trump has no mandate. I mean, again, I think she's been on the source. Anyway, let's move on. Paul, on Wednesday, Labour will table a motion at Tower Hamlets Council. Americans on the panel. This is a constituency in London, a borough in London, where the Pink Ladies and Raise the Colours campaign are going to be labelled as far right very quickly. Paul, what's your take on that?
Well, that's utterly ridiculous, isn't it? You can't. I mean, these are mums at the end of the day, worried mums. And if we're going to start labelling mums as far right, then it's the end of civilization. The highest position in our society is that of mother, as far as I'm concerned. And these people should be heard and listened to. I don't understand where Tower Hamlets have come from unless they're ideologically opposed to mothers.
Yep, bizarre. I mean, just bizarre. I mean, Tower Hamlets, I could spend a whole 2 hours talking about Tower Hamlets and the corruption that goes on there, but we'll save it for another night. Paul, thanks for your company, mate. Really appreciate you staying up late and entertaining me and the viewers and giving you a great analysis. Thank you. We'll speak soon.
Cheers, Ben.
Let's stick on the story of the Pink Ladies and the Raise the Colours campaign. So as I said, Tower Hamlets will table a motion, it's Labour specifically, Labour on Tower Hamlets Council, who run the council, labelling the Pink Ladies and the Raise the Colours campaign as far right. And whilst the motion acknowledges that local residents have valid concerns for their safety, they say that the concern has escalated into far right narratives under the banner of keeping women and children safe, and absolutely shocking. And just as you thought it couldn't get any worse, they also say the national campaign to fly the St George's Cross and Union flags is led by far-right extremists. Well, let's get the take of political commentator Lee Cohen now. Lee, is it far-right? Is it extreme to fly your national flag? I mean, what a stupid question.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Ben. This is outrageous and appalling. These are just ordinary women, mothers, grandmothers, teachers worried about their daughters' safety amid unchecked migrant hotels in their neighborhoods. I mean, what kind of twisted logic brands this as hate from across the pond, Ben? This looks like a full-scale assault on free speech and patriotism in the UK. In America, we'd call flying your national flag a basic right, not some far-right plot. Tower Hamlets labeling the Raise the Colours campaign as extremist? That's not governance. That's cultural suicide, punishing proud Brits for loving their country while ignoring real community fears.
Yeah, well, your president said it, didn't he, at the UN? He said your countries are going to hell, and this is exactly what he was talking about. You have a borough in London, which, by the way, is majority Muslim. I think white Brits in London now are a minority. They are 36%. That's what he means. Your country's going to hell. And when that happens, you get Labour councillors calling parents, mothers who are concerned about the safety of their children, far-right extremists. It makes me sick. Lee, just finally, before I let you go, Tony Blair has been named as the member of the Gaza Board of Peace. I mean, the papers yesterday were calling him Tony of Arabia. Your take? 30 seconds.
Well, Blair didn't just fail Britain, he fractured it. Tony Blair wrecked Britain and destabilized the Middle East. He doesn't belong anywhere near Gaza, Ben, unless we want more chaos. Donald Trump, love him or hate him, delivers results. He makes peace. Blair makes promises and piles of money.
Okay. Lee, thank you for your company. We'll catch up soon. Sweet dreams. Just from your sides very quickly, Pamela, good evening. You've said, hi Ben, thank you for an entertaining programme tonight with great guests and debates. The USA's gain with you and Bev at the helm is London, UK's best export. Keep going and being fearless and safe. Thank you. Really appreciate your kind words, Pamela. And Regalia, you've said far right. No, just right so far. And Jeff, you said, we the general public cannot afford to have fracking. It would help save our economy. Sorry, cannot afford not to have fracking. Bob, thank you very much. Victoria, thank you very much. Thank you at home for your company tonight. I'll see you again next week on the Let's Show Live. Sweet dreams. And Bev is here, of course, from tomorrow from 7 p.m. Eastern Time, midnight UK time. She's here Monday to Thursday. And trust me, she's got a top show in store. Lots going on tomorrow, including the second day of the Tory conference as well. Let us know your thoughts on the leadership contest brewing in the Tory party. Badenoch, Jenrick, or will Boris Johnson make a big comeback? It remains to be seen. I'll see you next week. Sweet dreams.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It was a stormy weekend for many of us, and there is still some cloud and rain around, but generally a more settled start to the new working week. Plenty of cloud, though, across western parts of Scotland. Some outbreaks of fairly persistent, mostly light rain and drizzle will continue as we go throughout the rest of Monday. Any mist and fog that we might have seen first thing across the very far south should clear, leaving plenty of sunny spells, perhaps quite a bit of prolonged sunshine across much of England and Wales through this afternoon. Fairly breezy across the very far northwest, but generally feeling much warmer than it did over the weekend. Highs in the south of 20, 21, perhaps even 22 degrees, and even across eastern parts of Scotland, we could see temperatures reaching into the low 20s. Still a cloudy and damp end to the day on Monday, though, across the very far west of Scotland. Outbreaks of perhaps slightly heavier rain arriving as we go through Monday evening, that pushing its way north and eastwards. A bit of a cloudy end to the day across parts of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England too, perhaps one or two clear spells developing in between, and still quite a lot of cloud around as well across parts of Wales and southwest England. Maybe some outbreaks of showery rain in places, but eastern areas generally holding on to some clearer spells, at least through the first part of the night. The heavier rain across western parts of Scotland pushes its way north and eastwards before this more organised band of rain arrives from the northwest, very slowly sinking its way south and eastwards into the early hours of Tuesday morning. But quite a bit more cloud around across much of England and Wales, and that generally means a milder night to come for all of us, temperatures quite widely holding up into the double figures. The area of rain across the northwest of Scotland continues to very slowly edge its way south and eastwards throughout much of Tuesday. Quite a bit more cloud around for much of England and Wales compared to what we saw on Monday, so not feeling quite as warm here. Maybe one or two brighter breaks or sunnier spells are possible, but the best of any sunshine definitely across the northwest of Scotland through Tuesday afternoon as that front clears through. But temperatures will be a little down compared to what we saw on Monday, but it will still feel pleasant if you do catch any sunshine.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's Newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GB News was needed because There literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GB News exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends. Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at. Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Good evening, I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Kemi Badenoch has announced she will take Britain out of the European Court of Human Rights if the Conservative Party wins the next election. She also set out plans to deport 150,000 illegal migrants a year. A so-called removals force, modelled on the US Immigration and Customs Agency, will be funded by closing asylum hotels. In her keynote speech at the party conference, she branded Labour and Reform UK as two sides of the same coin, and was adamant the Tories are the only party who can secure Britain's borders.
But I reject the politics that everything must go, that everything must be torn down, that everything is broken. But if we leave it to Labour or Reform, Britain will be divided. Only the Conservatives can bring this country back together. This is a battle we must win. By combining secure borders with a shared culture, strong values, and the confidence of a great nation, we can win the debate and win the next election.
Meanwhile, a donor and personal advisor to the Conservative leader has defected to Reform UK. Mark Gallagher reportedly donated £2,000 to Kemi Badenoch last October, just weeks before she was chosen to succeed Rishi Sunak. Police are to be given greater powers to restrict repeat protests. It comes just a day after almost 500 people were arrested at a pro-Palestine demonstration in central London. The majority were detained on suspicion of supporting the banned group Palestine Action. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, says these frequent large-scale protests have caused considerable fear to the Jewish community. People have gathered in Manchester to commemorate those who were killed in Thursday's terror attack on a synagogue. The funeral of one of the men who died, Melvin Kravitz, was held this morning, and the details of Adrian Dorby's funeral are to be announced soon. 3 men remain in hospital. One of them is in a critical condition, but the 2 others are now stable. 2 people who were arrested on suspicion of preparing terrorist acts have been released. Counter-terrorism police, though, have been granted extra time to question 4 others. Police are treating a suspected arson attack at a mosque in East Sussex as a hate crime. It's reported the fire brigade put out a large blaze in front of the mosque in Peacehaven late last night. Police said no one was harmed. Several local authorities, including the Labour MP for the area, Chris Ward, have condemned the incident as deeply distressing. Israel's Prime Minister says he hopes to announce the release of all remaining hostages held in Gaza within the coming days. Benjamin Netanyahu says it's the military and diplomatic pressure of Israel and the US which has forced Hamas to agree to some of Donald Trump's peace plan. However, sticking points over the group's disarmament remain. Israel is sending negotiators to Egypt for indirect talks with the group tomorrow. They'll be joined by senior US envoys and Arab mediators.